suture. They consist of 2 stitches fixed by a single knot. Somebody please hold the sponge. So I remind, how do we prepare the instruments? The needle is divided into 3 parts. The needle should not be introduced too deeply. The thread should not be too long. The instrument is held in this way. 1st and 4th fingers are in the rings. To charge the thread temporarily, you take the instrument by your left hand. The thread is stretched and moved around the tips of the needle hole. So to perform the Z-shaped suture, we perform the 1st stitch as usually, like you already know. And then, after making the 1st stitch, you need to place the needle once again in the normal position, in the working position. And then we perform one more stitch in the same direction, a little bit away from the previous stitch. So here, we introduce the needle. You see the letter Z, yes? Like zigzag shaped suture. But when you tie the knot, the letter Z will be transformed into X. Yes. This is the Z-shaped suture. So just 2 stitches performed in the same direction using a single thread. After the 1st stitch, you will need to put the needle into the original position. Yes. And the U-shaped suture, it is very similar, but with a small difference. It also consists of 2 stitches. So the 1st stitch is made as usually. But after the 1st stitch, before you perform the 2nd one, you need to put the opposite end of the thread into the needle. So not only the needle, but the thread is also recharged. The another end should be placed into the needle. And also a little bit away from the previous stitch, you perform the 2nd one. Like a high letter U, yes, appears. And when you stretch the knot, 2 fragments of the thread will be located on both sides from the wound, parallel to the wound. This is the U-shaped suture. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, one more thing. I will show you the so-called apodactyl method of tying the knot. Did I show you it?
No, sir.
The so-called apodactyl or instrumental method of tying the knot. It is not the U knot. The knots are absolutely the same, but a little bit another method to tie these knots. It can be used also after any suture. Now I will make just the simple interrupted. To use this method, you need to pull through the wound almost the whole thread. So one end of the thread should be very, very short. And then you need to put the thread around the instrument. Then by the instrument you take this end. And now you retract your left hand. Your left hand is moved away. Not both hands, because if you retract both hands, this thread will become longer, but we don't need it. We need to leave it very short. So this is the simple knot tied using this method. If you need to tie the surgical knot using this method, you remember the surgical knot consists of 2 loops, and the first loop should be double. So to make it double, you will need to turn the thread around the instrument twice. If just one time, it will be, the result will be the simple knot. If two times, we will receive the double loop. Hold it, please. No, and then, after the double loop, one more simple loop. And finally, the reef knot also may be tied using this method. You remember, the reef knot is consists of two simple, but with changed direction of the threads. So to tie the reef knot, first you make the ordinary simple knot, and for second you need to turn the thread in opposite direction. Clear? This is my ordinary direction, but if I change the direction, the result will be the reef knot. Clear? The main feature, the main advantage of this method is that it helps us to save the thread. You remember when we look, yes, when I tie the thread, the knots by the hands, these both ends will be rather long and they cannot be reused. But using this method, you see the length of the resulting thread is rather long, so I can use it for one more suture. Especially opportune is this method is used when we use the atraumatic needles. Atraumatic needles are the needles which are produced having the thread already fixed. This is the example of atraumatic needle. So you can use this needle only before you consume the whole this thread. So when the thread is consumed, this needle cannot be reused. But these materials and these needles are quite expensive. So to save the thread, usually using these atraumatic needles, we prefer to make the apodactyl knots. Look once again. So I pull the whole thread through the wound, leaving one end very short. This was the first loop, the second, and the third. So you see, just then we cut this end, and the needle may be used for next suture. So for this method, just only several centimeters of the thread are necessary, are used. Yes. Clear?
Yes.
Okay, my dear friends, practice a little bit. I have 5 needle holders.